every day is an average of 500 meals, and somebody has to deliver that meal. And so every day it takes about 50 volunteers to help get those meals prepared. We have a very small staff at about 6 people who help prepare the meal and about 38 people to deliver the meals. And that's where partners like you all, step in and help us with the organization of, how do we recruit these volunteers? And that's really our biggest challenge. When you have new platforms and technology, it always helps organizations like ours.
Saul, Kathleen, we're so happy that you've joined us today and said yes to being on the Good Work West Texas podcast. And we're just excited. Leslie and I are always, when we get to do these interviews and talk to people, it's just exciting to hear the good work that's happening. And that's really what we're about. We want people to know the good work that's happening in our region, those lives that are being impacted, and how we can be a part of it. And so, thank you just for saying yes. And we really just want to get to know you, both of you, and learn about obviously senior life, but also learn about just your stories and what brought you either to Midland or to senior life and to really serving in the community. And we feel like it's important to share those stories with people and to just, yeah, give the good news. So, um, Saul, would you like to get started with a little bit of just telling us about you? And I know that you've celebrated recently, so I'm going to let you officially tell us what you've just celebrated, but
Okay.
it's good news.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome.
Born and raised Midlander. I came to Senior Life Midland, formerly Community and Senior Services. Next March will be my 32nd year at this agency, and it's a blessing to me. I just wanted to let you know that back in those days, years, I should say, few businesses or organizations would have opened up their doors to someone that's in a wheelchair or with a disability. And this agency gave me that opportunity, and I've taken and rolled with it.
I love that. I love that.
I was introduced to this agency through a United Way presentation at a hospital where I was working. I learned about the amazing programs that this agency does and even did at those times. Obviously, since I'm in a wheelchair, I don't drive, so I couldn't deliver meals. I couldn't do the handyman program because just not handy. But there was a program that really opened my eyes. It was called a telephone reassurance program. It was a program where you had a one-on-one visit with a client over the telephone, not in person. You didn't know who the client was except through the phone. So I did this program for about 8, 9 months, and my client that I had never met ended up in the hospital where I worked. Every day I'd go and look at the census, see if there was anybody there that I knew, and there was my client. So I rushed over there. She was in the ICU ward, and within a few days, she passed. So I took about 8, 9 months leave from my volunteer duties, called back to the agency to take another client, and just then there was a new program that they had just brought to Midland. It was a federal program known as a Retired Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP for short. And the individual that signed me up as a volunteer, Carla Kurtner, said, Saul, we have a new program. So I said, well, sign me up. She says, nope, you're too young. It's 55 and older. She says, but I do have a position available. It's a paid position. I said, even better. She goes, you don't like where you work? I said, it's okay, but I have no advancement here. And I have a college degree, and I know I have much more abilities than what I'm being utilized here. So I went for the interview, went back for a second interview, and I got the position. Within a year and a half, my boss then, Carla, decided to not return. She had a baby. And so the director then, Connie, says, well, we have two choices, Saul. Can hire a new director or you can be the director. I said, I want the job. So been there ever since.
That's
So it's
great.
been a amazing ride so
Absolutely.
far. It's been
Absolutely.
great.
I love just the honesty about when you think about 30 plus years ago and how there was probably an intimidation of
Yes,
helping people with disabilities or where can we, you know, have them in our, positions at a variety of companies. And so I love that you forged ahead and you knew that there were gifts that you could bring to the different
exactly.
agencies that you worked for and the telephone program. I mean, how needed is that even today? When you
Yes.
think about the touch that we want to have on people's lives and just relationships. That's what people long for. And obviously, she really, the relationship you had touched your heart.
I was beautiful. This lady would, if I was to miss a day for whatever reasons, she would worry about me. I said, no, I'm supposed to worry about you. And
Oh,
that's the bond that you build,
yes.
not only through that program, but through all of our programs.
Mhm,
Our clients are an extension of our families.
mhm. It's
It's a
so much
beautiful
about
thing. Yes, ma'am.
absolutely so much about relationships
Yes,
and really investing into other people. So
exactly.
32 years, I that's a long time, Saul. It's a huge investment into this community. And so just thank you for doing that and thank you for all the ups and downs. I mean,
Yes.
of just even being at a workplace and transitions and programs and all those kinds of things that you think about when you're on the job and um, probably different directors along the way, executive directors. And so you've met a lot of people along the way and impacted a lot of people.
I looked the other day, it was over 2,500 volunteers that have come through since I started there,
That-
come through those doors. It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Just it's inspiring. It is,
Thank you.
and just
Thank you.
appreciate you doing that. And
Thank
Kathleen, I know that you've been at Senior Life for several years, but tell us a little about your story and how you came to Midland, your role in playing a part of Senior Life.
Sure. So I'm also a Midlander, born and raised, and I love Midland. I don't think there is a finer hometown in the world. Speaking about relationships, we could not do what we do at Senior Life Midland without partners, community partners, volunteers. And when we got the invitation from you two today, we were thrilled. Saul and I were so excited. So thank you for having us today. Um, I've been in nonprofits and education for my entire career. I had always worked with students, and it's really where my heart is. I love working with disadvantaged populations, people who really need help. That's just where my heart has always been. I've always wanted to help people be in a better place. And there was a point in my life several years back where my family was struggling. And I'm always that connection person. I've always helped people with resources. But I had never had to help people who were elderly. And all of a sudden, my parents were struggling, and my parents all of a sudden were old
Mhm.
and I didn't know where to turn. And so I already had a new position waiting for me, working with students like I'd always done. And I saw an ad in the paper and told my husband, you know what? I'm going to go and interview for this position. And he said, you already have a job waiting for you. And I said, yeah, I'm not taking the job. I'm just going to go see what resources are available. I left the interview and called him and said, I think I'm going to work there. And he said, you've never worked with elderly people. And I said, I know. I don't know what it is, but I think I'm going to work there. And sure enough, I went to work there. That was over 11 years ago. and it's my calling. Every day for me and my family at that time was a crisis. My mom had Alzheimer's. My brother, who was Down syndrome, had renal failure, was on dialysis. My dad was quite elderly. He had been going to the office still every day and was forced to retire. Um, we had called him before I went to work there and said, Dad, let's try Meals on Wheels. And he said, That's for old people. I'm not doing that.
Mm.
I said, Dad, you're 88. And he said, I'm not doing that. And I said, We've got to just try it. We're all struggling. We'll still come at dinner every day and be there for you at dinner. But we're trying to work. We had kids we were raising and we were struggling every single day. So put him on the program and he loved it. He had so many new friends, people checking in on him, and he was so happy just to have connections again. He had never been, without going to the office, and now he was homebound. And it was wonderful. And so I realized this is an amazing outreach that we do. People who can't get out anymore now are still having a connection, even though they're not getting out of their home anymore. They're still getting a nutritious meal at lunch. And it's not just the nutrition value, it's so much more than that. And now we got through that time in our life that was such a challenge, and I get to be part of that for other people's families, and it's such a blessing. As Saul said earlier, we're blessed. We are blessed getting to do that for others. And so it's such a gift in my life. Every day I get to do this. I can't say it's just my job. It's a calling. And I'm so rewarded every day to get to go and help other people.
Yeah.
So I love it.
That story is amazing when you think about just the life change that was brought about in your own family and you got to experience it firsthand. And so you have that experience now that you're bringing to that executive director role and managing this whole organization with that really that heartbeat of, this was a part of my family. And so it's I'm sure that inspiration every day that you have the ability as an organization and the volunteers and the community partners that allow the good work to happen, that that's just something really significant that you have been a part of. And so I'm sure it gives you quite the just the heart behind it of really being able to see how it can change other people's lives as well. So
Yes, from the volunteer end to the clients end. In our world, we turn on the news and we see some pretty heavy things. And from my perspective, I get to see beautiful things, beautiful just gifts every day that just walk in. Saul and I talk about it every day. Just yesterday, he called me and said, Hey, this may be a stretch, but do you know where we could get a hospital bed? I just had a home health employee call me, one of our partners, and she's desperate. Somebody needs a hospital bed.
mm,
I said, You're kidding me. Yes, we have one. We have one that was just donated. And
Wow.
he said, You're kidding me. I said, No, Saul. We have one. And we have things like that literally that happen all the time. There are no accidents. We
mhm,
are able to step in and help people who have nowhere else to turn.
mm,
It is amazing.
that's exciting.
You said something that I think is important for people, for listeners to hear. Because even myself, when I think about Meals on Wheels, I think about the homebound senior or somebody who has no one to bring them anything. But that's not always the case. It sounds like in your case, your father had family. However, the burden that sometimes is on a family who is trying to work full time, raise kids, and kids are involved. And then the guilt that you probably feel when you can't do all of the pieces as the daughter, the mom, the wife. And so it sounds like that sometimes it's also a service that takes a little bit of the pressure off of families. It's not that these are people who have absolutely no one. It's just when they're in a hard situation and
I am glad you brought that point up. It is quite challenging when you're working full time, you have children, you are just trying your best to keep everybody above water.
right.
I had two people on hospice at once, plus my dad who could not hear. We were just doing the best we could. There were actually five siblings. One lives out of town. My brother who was on hospice and special needs, and another brother who lives in town, and a sister who lives in town, all of us trying to make it and work. And it is a lot. It is a lot on everyone. Um, and just trying to keep everybody, afloat. My dad always worked. He had never paid bills. My mom always did that.
Right.
He had never served a meal. My mom always did that. And so when my mom, was out of commission all of a sudden, we stepped in, but doing the laundry, taking him to doctor's appointments, fixing him dinner, doing all of those things, and my dad doing the best he could.
Right.
My mom would be down the street wandering, and my dad couldn't hear and didn't know. Um, and Meals on Wheels would call me and say, "We saw your mom and brought her back home. We saw her wandering down the street, and thank goodness." We talk about Meals on Wheels. It's one of 8 programs. We have 8 amazing programs, and of course, Saul talked about the volunteer program, but there are 8 programs that are just outstanding for Midland seniors, both active and homebound. But you're right. It's not just for people who have nobody. It's for people who are struggling and haven't navigated these waters before. I joke and say, there's a book, What to Expect When You're Expecting a Child,
Mm-hmm.
but there is not a book of how to navigate when your parents all of a sudden are elderly and now it's your turn to step in that role. It's really hard to take car keys away from your
Right.
parent who shouldn't be driving anymore. It's hard when, sometimes you feel like you're taking their dignity or their independence away. And those are things we kind of help with at our agency.
Yeah. I think when we talk about, we always look at it. Leslie and I get the opportunity to look at it from a volunteer perspective a lot, but you think about the client, and even though they're homebound, one of the things that we always say at every neighbor is every neighbor um, has value, and even the people that are homebound and the relationships that they can bring to other people and have life to give back themselves, and they desire those relationships. So I'm thankful that you guys see the value in people no matter where they are, that it's not just you know, it's not just the driver, it's also the relationship behind the person who's delivering the meal and the client who really needs that conversation. And it's a way to value them, um, just in what they're doing as well, and to build relationships with them. So a little bit of just when you think about Midland or just the need in general, I know that you had some milestones that you had told us about, with 5,000,000? What was it? five
Yes,
million
yes.
meals? And so, but describe to us the need and, um, of how many people that you really serve on a daily basis in that, to get to that 5 millionth meal.
Yes.
But, tell us the need of that.
Sure. We celebrated that 5 millionth meal in our history. We're over 40 years old as an agency, but Meals on Wheels as a program is even older. It's been around since the early 70s, first started at First Christian Church. We are very quickly already close to 6 million soon. But behind each meal is such a story. Everybody has their own personal story. And so it's so interesting, but every day is an average of 500 meals, and somebody has to deliver that meal. And so every day it takes about 50 volunteers to help get those meals prepared. We have a very small staff at about 6 people who help prepare the meal and about 38 people to deliver the meals. And that's where partners like you all, step in and help us with the organization of, how do we recruit these volunteers? And that's really our biggest challenge of an organization because some people do age out.
Right.
Some people move, some people just have to go back to work if they didn't work for a time. Always recruiting new volunteers. And, when you have new platforms and technology, it always helps organizations like ours. And so it's always the biggest challenge. And we love it when people have new ideas of how to recruit, how to retain, how to recognize amazing people that help us in our mission. And one thing that you had said earlier is everybody has a purpose, everybody has value. And that's absolutely correct. We see people of all walks of life that come to us with all talents. And one thing that I love so much, especially having a brother who was Down syndrome and the joy of our life, he volunteered in nursing homes for nearly 20 years. And that was his purpose. And so you had asked me who inspired me to kind of get into the role I'm in nonprofits. And this was my brother, Daniel.
Oh,
And he, again, was in nursing homes. You've seen this picture
Love it.
for almost 20 years, but um, he would go every morning, 5 days a week, and loved being in the nursing homes. He would clean the tables and serve coffee and tea and water. That was kind of his job, but I believe his real purpose was just to greet every resident, always hug everybody, and just make everybody feel special. And so currently we have 7 special needs groups that come and deliver meals every week. And we are working with each group to do even more. We know everybody has ability, everybody has value, everybody has a purpose. And now that we have our new building, we have much more room and they can come into the kitchen and they can do so much more than just deliver meals, which is quite a job in itself. Our seniors love seeing these individuals and their smiles. And so we have really loved these relationships.
Yeah, that's so it's so special just to hear those stories of inspiration of people that have been in your life that you've seen that. Saul, could you answer that question too of who has really inspired you to really just when we talked about the 30 plus years that you've been involved, who is that that you think about that really gave you an example of service?
Well, when I mentioned about listening to the programs that the agency had back then, I volunteer was not something that I even imagined. But prior to that, I had seen where former President Carter was involved with the Habitat for Humanity and how he saw that when he visited one of the sites that they were short of volunteers. So him and his or his wife Rosalind decided, hey, we're going to volunteer. And then after that, he started recruiting volunteers, and I was pretty impressed with that. I'm going, here's a president that makes time for others. And so as the years went on and when I got the opportunity, I said, well, this is something I can do, just like what he could do. Not putting myself in the same situation or same case, but
but
like Kathleen mentioned,
2,500
yes,
volunteers later,
yeah,
as you
exactly.
just mentioned. So sounds like you've done a lot of that.
Oh, I love what I do. Kathleen mentioned this some time ago. Nobody can tell you no. I said, yeah, I guess so. I just have that little knack. I mean, sometimes I just grab people wherever they're at. I need you. Can you do this? Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure. They may not know what they're gonna do, but they're gonna do something.
It,
And so that inspires me to see not only him, but other people. We have a 99-year-old in our kitchen that volunteers to package meals every day, Monday through Friday. He's an inspiration. And people that work with him go, gosh, if we could only make it to 90, not just be in the kind of shape that he's in and the kind of desire and heart that he has. It's pretty impressive. I invite anybody to come and visit our agency so you can see this gentleman.
Yeah.
He is pretty impressive.
It's very, very impressive. And I think this story that you told about President Carter, I think there may be people in our listening audience that may not even know who he is.
Exactly.
It's true, but he was very involved with Habitat, and I think it's just really critical to always remember too that people are watching you.
Exactly.
You probably never had the opportunity to actually meet him
No,
in person, um, but yet his actions inspired you
they
to do
did.
what you're doing today. And so I think that's an amazing story of just how it's not necessarily the people right around you. It could be the 99-year-old for someone,
Exactly.
but it's somebody that you, if you have influence. And I think today in our culture, there's a lot of influencers. And so,
There are.
how do we influence others for good? And that's what we want to do. And so, I thank you for sharing that story of just that it's
Well,
somebody that we probably wouldn't have. I didn't expect that answer. So,
well, I
um,
figured I'd throw a little,
yeah,
throw
A
you off a
curveball.
little
throw me
bit.
a curveball. Throw me
Yeah.
a curveball.
But I mean, like Kathleen mentioned, everybody has abilities. So, oftentimes when there's events, um, and I see all my coworkers busy moving tables, decorating, sometimes I go, man, I wish I could help. And they tell me, you did help. You organized this. You led this. You did it. You called people. So we have different ways of helping. Doesn't always have to be something of moving tables or something physical or things of that sort. You can do it in a variety of ways. And these special needs individuals, they bring a real joy to our agency
That's great.
and the clients.
So you mentioned earlier you didn't see yourself much as a handyman,
Yeah.
but I believe y'all have a handyman group
Mhm.
that still goes out and helps people maybe deliver things or fix things. Um, tell us a couple of other different programs that you feel like people may or may not know about that Senior Life is that you guys
yes, I would
participate
love
in.
to tell you about
Yeah.
our foster grandparent program.
Okay.
So that program has been in limbo since April under federal cuts. And we didn't know until literally just a couple of weeks ago that we were going to keep the program. We were looking at funding it locally ourselves. We really believe in that program so much so that we were figuring out how to fund it locally. It is a program where elderly people help in the classrooms. And so we have about 20 um, seniors that are grouped with at risk students in the classrooms. So the teachers find determined students who are not reading and working at grade level. Oftentimes they are behavior challenged and they're really struggling and they need mentors that can read with them and that can really just spend one on one time with them. It not only helps the students and the teachers, but our grandparents, this is again that word, this is their purpose. And when we thought we were losing the program, um, our grandparents were devastated. And so we said, we're going to figure out how to do this. We will get you back in the classrooms. We couldn't start when school started because we'd have to figure out how to do this. And so they are like, you know what? Many of them, they registered to be volunteers in the classroom. They do receive a small stipend. And when I say small, it's $4 an hour. So they went ahead and registered as volunteers unpaid until we could figure it out. And now, Victory, they are getting back into classrooms, receiving that little bit of money, and it helps everybody involved. We love that just that little seniors to students, and not everybody benefits.
Mm.
Everybody benefits, not only the students or the teachers or the seniors, but everybody. And it's so cute because even the students teach the seniors.
Yeah.
We have the seniors are like, you know what? I learned to Snapchat. They taught me how to Snapchat. I can Snapchat with my grandkids now. And we're like, that is so cool. I don't know how to Snapchat, but it's taught them things that help them relate more with their grandkids. And so everybody's learning. And there's just so much to that generational learning and connection. But again, I mean, we find that every day, everybody has a purpose. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter your ability, everybody has a purpose. So that's a really cool program.
That's good.
And then Saul was talking earlier about, the program he started with, which was Retired Senior Volunteer Program, which was a federal program. But we flipped that program to be locally hosted by us and changed that program. So it's for all ages, not just 55 and up anymore. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about your program.
It's a beautiful program. Like I mentioned earlier, when I first got there, the program was just for seniors. And I love my seniors. But there's something about a youth individual that wants to give back and they don't know how
Mhm.
or what can I really do? I mean, some of them have a lot of abilities and some are shy, but they can see that there are needs out there. So working with the youngsters, and our youngest volunteer is 7.
Mm.
He has been delivering meals with his parents, and I'll let Kathleen tell you that story because it's a beautiful story. But anyway, he's now 7, and he is our youngest. Of course, our oldest is 99. We actually have 2 99-year-olds. The other one volunteers through the City of Midland Police Department through the Citizens on Patrol. Him and his wife go through town looking for individuals that are parking illegally in handicapped spots, and they leave a ticket. Although our former volunteer of mine used to call them greeting cards. But anyway, it's a beautiful program because it gives us the ability to visit with people of all ages. And when you age, like I'm aging myself, being there sitting in my office with a 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 40-year-old, 30-year-old, it's pretty amazing to see, oh yeah, I can do that. Well, I can help you do this. Where, sometimes our older people, they just can't do certain things. Sometimes they're physical, or sometimes it requires driving through town. And we all know we hate to drive around here now with traffic and this and that. And these individuals, they don't care. Oh, it's dark outside. I can drive at night, where our seniors may not be able to. So, plus, there's some volunteer opportunities that do require some physical work.
Right.
Our Texas size garage sale, there's many times when we need somebody that can move some stuff around, furniture, help do a pickup, and our seniors just can't do that sometimes. So finding individuals that are younger, young legs, young backs, or they just have other friends that they can bring. It's just a beautiful program that gives us the opportunity to touch many more lives, many more individuals that we weren't tapping into. I mean, I used to sit in various meetings and I'll go, well, that's a potential volunteer over there because he's gray headed. Now I don't look at that. Oh yeah, they're potential, all right. I could use that guy. He's a big guy.
Those are
He
big
could,
muscles.
yeah,
I'm
he
going
could
for that. I
move
don't
some
care how
stuff
old he
around.
is.
So yeah, it's been a blessing. It's really rejuvenated me. Sometimes we get real comfortable in our position, in our jobs, and we just go with the flow and we become stale.
Mhm.
Not that I've become stale, but sometimes we need that little B12 shot. And this is what this is. This program was just that. There was many times that I'd roll into Kathleen's office. I'm going, man, I'm just fired up. I really love this program. It's just giving me a new lease on life.
Yeah.
So I invite anyone out there that is looking for a place to volunteer, whether it's through us at Senior Life Midland, and we have a lot of opportunities. But if there's something out there that just tickles your bone and you go, man, I really want to try that, we can connect you.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome.
That's great. I think just the importance of all the stories that you've told and just the things that we've been able to share. I think it just goes back to just that real true belief that we become a stronger community
Yes.
when everybody finds their place and when everybody realizes and has that awareness that says, "Oh, I can give back." And it may not be that they can do an everyday route or
Right.
a once
Mhm.
a week route, but even to substitute or do something when there's a big event or like the garage sale, be a part of some of those things and get involved. I think that's what we want to promote in the community, that everybody has a place to do those things. And then also, we also realize the donor aspect of it, that, we would love people to see a place that they want to invest back into and to regardless of their financial checkbook, that even small gifts, any size gifts can help feed seniors, can help some of these other programs locally. And I know that you do have federally funded things, but it's also important to know that there's some need that you need to raise locally, some money to give back to those programs so that you guys can continue to do what you're going to do. And so it's both and.
Yes.
It's the volunteer, it's the donor, it's everybody having a place.
Absolutely. It does take everybody to make our programs work. $10. $10 is the price of a meal. And it's not just the meal, as I said earlier, it's that safety check, it's that human connection. And, I hate talking about COVID, but we really learned a lot from it. Those of us that have not been isolated realized it's really hard, mentally, physically. It took a toll on us. And we realized this is what isolated homebound seniors go through every single day. When you are homebound, isolated elderly, you go through that every day. And just to get that knock on the door, it means hope. Hope that somebody is going to come again tomorrow and just say hello. It shows somebody has not forgotten you. It shows somebody cares about you. It shows that you are loved. And that is a big thing when you are alone.
Mhm.
It is giant. You may have been married for 64 years and you lost your spouse. And just to hear that knock on the door is everything for you.
Will you clarify something? Because maybe all of our listeners know this, but I did not realize this until I got in this space and started working and been in some meetings and conversations with you guys, and also Mills on Wheels in Odessa. But so you're talking about the knock on the door. So I think that there's this idea sometimes, if you've never volunteered with Meals on Wheels, that you've got these meals, you drive them, these are the addresses, you go leave them on the door, knock, and you leave. Can you explain for people who, even like me, I didn't realize that you couldn't. That's not how that works. That you actually have true physical contact with everyone. And if you don't, then there's also a process, if I understand correctly, that, hey, I wasn't able to deliver to Mr.
Yes.
Smith. He didn't come to the door. And then there's some welfare,
Protocols.
some stuff.
Yeah.
Can you just explain what
Absolutely.
that looks like, how that really works?
Yes, there are protocols in place for safety checks, and those are just as important as that noontime meal. So you never leave a meal. There are protocols that the clients have to follow. If they have a doctor's appointment. They are to call and let us know so that we don't deliver a meal. That way, if the volunteer goes to deliver, nobody answers, they have a phone number to call. Nobody answers the phone. They're knocking loudly, Meals on Wheels, no answer. They bring the meal back to us and they let us know Mrs. Whoever didn't answer. Okay. We're like, they didn't call. She always calls us and lets us know something's going on. We know that's not like her. We call, no answer. We call her emergency contact. Maybe it's her daughter or her next door neighbor. Um, yeah, she should be there. She didn't say she wasn't going to be there. No doctor appointment today. That's a tip off. Either that emergency contact goes by there, or many times we go by there. Or we will call emergency, whatever the case may be. We become many of these people's family. We know them very well, all 500 people. Um, Many times we go by there, we don't just change lives, we save lives a
Yeah.
lot. We will find somebody has had a fall. We will find people in emergency distress. Many times the outcome isn't the best. But that emergency protocol is so vital. It is so vital.
So much more than a meal. And I
It
think
is.
that that's something that not
Yes.
everyone knows. So thank you for breaking that down and explaining that, because we had referenced multiple times the contact,
Yes.
but just so that people understand, like, this is what that really means. And then if you
Yes.
drive the same route for, I mean, I've heard some really sweet stories of people who've become close
So many
with,
wonderful stories. I'm going to tell y'all one of my very favorite stories, and I think about this so often. So, throughout our whole deal, it was a very hard situation, having my mom with Alzheimer's for a very long time, and my brother's situation where he was terminal with his renal disease, and, my dad being the last one left. And we couldn't get my dad to leave the house anymore. He just was just beside himself. And so he looked forward to Fridays. That was his only joy. He would call Thursdays and say, Kathleen, tomorrow's Friday. You know what that means? It's Cookie Friday. Somebody on his route would always bake cookies themselves for Friday. When they would deliver, they would bring homemade cookies. And he would always call me Thursdays and say, tomorrow's Cookie Friday, and I'll save you a cookie. And so I always thought that was the cutest thing. And so I thought about that, just all these years, and I thought that was always really sweet. And so recently I was talking to a volunteer and he told me, my wife passed away last year and she delivered for years and years. And he said, my son was disabled. He had gotten into a car wreck, and a lot of years I looked after him at home while my wife always delivered meals. And he said, but I always baked cookies for her to deliver. And I went, he said, yeah, she always wanted to take those cookies for Fridays. And I went, are you kidding me? And he was like, no, um, she said everybody loved those cookies for Fridays. And I said, I wondered who baked those all these years. And he said, well, when she passed away last year, I decided I should start delivering in her memory, but I would still bake cookies too. And I went, oh my gosh, you are our cookie fairy. You delivered to my dad. And he was like, did my wife deliver to you all? And I said, yeah, you did. And
that's
so
cool.
there are so many stories that are just so
That's so
dear,
great.
and generations. We see grandkids that delivered with their grandparents now grown up delivering.
Mhm.
It's a Meals on Wheels. I mean, it's a tradition
Yeah.
in Midland.
I love it that it's just creating a legacy
It
and
is.
Yes.
seeing stories like that come full circle, but then just seeing how the investment into the community can go on. And I know that there may be some things. Kind of the last question would just be what would there be if you had a dream for your organization and in the community? What would you say that dream would be
Saul
for
and
you
I
guys?
talked about that this morning. And
We
of
did.
course, we would love to have an unlimited amount of money coming in so
Yes.
we could feed everybody, of course, that would be amazing and unlimited amount of volunteers. But we talked about it this morning. And, you know, I just would love for everyone to know the ability of people, whether it's elderly people or people with disabilities. I call them people with various abilities.
Mhm.
Everybody has value, and I would love for people to be more aware of that. Everybody can do a mail out.
Mhm.
We've taken mail outs to nursing homes where they can, help lick stamps,
Mm.
help seal envelopes. Um, I mean, that's what we talked about
Yes.
this morning is when we agreed that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, even I remember way back in my early years, we had a lady that was visually impaired, and her husband and her used to do mailings, and then with this organization, and then they said, "Well, you're too slow." So she called me one day. She says, "Well, my only volunteer work was with this organization, and now they don't want me." I said, "We want you." She says, "Well, what do you," I said, "Tell me the things that you were doing." She said, "We were doing mail outs." I said, "Okay." And I knew that, she was visually impaired. She says, "I can do mail outs." I said, "Oh, I'm sure you can." And she says, "You want me to tell you how I do them?" I said, "Sure." She says, Alvin, that was her late husband, um, sits next to me, and he puts letters or envelopes in front of me, and he describes to me where they're at. Okay, they're this. You're going to be going to your right. And you're going to be putting the tape here, or however the detail was. And I would watch them, and it was amazing. She did just as fine as anyone else. So that was a case where you could see that she just had the same amount of abilities as anyone else at that table,
Mhm.
and she loved it. She was a dispatcher for a nursing agency. She had a great voice, and she could talk to anybody. So that was her job, but this was her volunteer job.
Oh,
And she had a service dog that would sit there right next to her. Anyway, we really missed them, but
yeah.
they were incredible volunteers, always ready. And he was real quiet. She spoke the whole time. Just- he just sat next to her and helped her out, and they were a great pair.
I love the word that you said, we want you, because I think that's so critical. I sometimes in the nonprofit community, it's all about the need. It's all
Yes,
about, you know, and we get focused on that need. But when you say that you're wanted, makes you
exactly.
feel completely different. And so we hope that just through the podcast today that people feel wanted,
Mhm.
that to be able to be invited into your story of what's happening at Senior Life, and we want that for the community to know that they have a place to serve and a place to be wanted. We also have just at the very end every podcast we have a little surprise. Um, it's just
It's not a
it's
gift.
not a gift.
Many
Oh,
It's
people
a
have been
surprise.
confused and
It
very
is a
disappointed.
surprise. And Leslie has it. She's going to share it with us.
Okay, so there's 7 million, that's what it felt like anyways when I was typing it, quotes in this bag. And so we just want you to pull out a random quote, read it, and tell us what it means to you. That's how we like to end, with this random quote.
You want to read it?
Saul, you can pick one yourself if you
that's fine. No, I like this.
Okay.
I'll share that if we have any time about what I just mentioned.
want. Okay.
Every day is an opportunity to make a new happy ending.
That's beautiful.
That's good.
Yeah. So what I meant is when I was younger, going back to the abilities, I wanted to fit in just like any other kid. So I would get a lot of special treatment. You can jump the line, you can do this, you can do that. Kids would give me these looks. As I got older and I started going through the airport, going to Vegas to these big shows, and there was literally hundreds of thousands of people in line. Sir, would you like to go to the front of the line? Absolutely. At the airport? Absolutely. You drop that, can I pick it up for you? Yes, of course. So things change. So when Kathleen picked that up for me, yeah, let her get it for me. It might take me a while to dig that sucker out of there. So
That's
great.
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, okay. So, what's your quote?
Mine says, growing might feel like breaking at first.
Mhm.
Mm,
And I think this is very truthful. I was bullied as a kid a lot with a special needs brother, and it was very hard growing up, but I would not change it for the world. It made me very empathetic and compassionate, but it also made me a champion for people that need a voice. And I have passed 2 state laws for people who need that voice. And I'm going to keep fighting for a better Texas, hopefully a better world. I just believe that our world needs, kindness. Our world needs people that are fighting for others. So I do believe this is a great quote.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. For the plant to come out of the ground has to break. Like that's
yeah.
when you read that. I'm like, oh, I typed that. I don't even remember that one because there's 7 million in there. But
Wow.
just thinking that's the image that I saw was like when something's starting to grow and the ground has to break.
And it is hard. We see a lot of sad things at our
Oh,
work.
sure.
I don't focus on that. We work a lot with APS. We see a lot of people whose families have not been good to them, and a lot of sad situations, a lot of medical conditions and things like that. But every day, like the quote Saul got, we get to start over,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and we get to see a lot of beautiful things too. And so that's really what we get to focus on, and we get to see a lot of amazing, wonderful people doing great work. And
Yes.
so we love that.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories and coming on our show and just yeah, sharing real life, the hard things, the great things,
Yes.
just what Senior Life's doing and the work and the volunteers and the donors that make those things happen, and obviously your staff that you work alongside. So we just appreciate the work that you're doing and invite others to be a part of that. So
Well, thank you
thank
for
you.
having us. We are so grateful. We couldn't do this
No.
without our community and just all of our partners. We could not do everything we do without everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.